Alright, welcome everyone. Hobie-Wan Kenobi here. I'm doing a SLX BFS review. If you don't know what that is, it's a new BFS reel that Shimano came out with over in the Japanese market. I know that the Corrado BFS that's being released in the US. I will be doing a review on that too in the next couple days here. But this video, what it's going to be me. I'm figuring out about the reel, its performance, same time you guys are watching this video, so stay tuned. I'm going to go over the drag, everything, pitching, casting, everything that you possibly need to know about this reel. It does feel exactly like the Scorpion in hand. Like when I'm palming it, it feels exactly like the Scorpion BFS. Actually, I have the Scorpion BFS. Forgot I actually had this in my pocket. I got the Scorpion BFS right here. They look the same gear ratio, everything. They look exactly the same. They feel the same, which is to be expected. A lot of people are already speculating online that they would look the same. But outside of that, comparing it, I'm more interested in how it fishes. I could read, and you guys too, can read online on the specs, the weight, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to go over how it fishes, which is probably what most of you guys are looking for. The lure I'm going to be using, I have this on a NED rig. Hey, I think that's 1/10 of an ounce on there, a little bit heavier because it's windy. But this is a 3-inch Helgamite made by Nico Baits. It's pretty stretchy bait too. I have not fished with this bait yet. I fished with other Nico baits and they've been pretty good. I'll end up pitching this around. There's a lot of flooded timber and brush around here. So I'm going to try to pitch this in and around there, not too deep because it's not Texas rigged or anything. Those brakes are on 1. You will need fingernails to move this. These knobs. It's kind of a systemic thing with these. Even with the Aldebaran BFS, it's still like that. I'm going to put it on 4. I have my spool's tension set to barely any side-to-side play. That's kind of my baseline as to what I do for BFS reels. Right, so in some of these bays, it's like 50 degrees. It's been super cold up where I live. So I'm trying to find some of these bays and like this flooded timber here. Hopefully there's some small bass that are still up here. It was like when it warmed up, it was 60 degrees for a few days, and it actually the water temp actually went up quite a bit, and there was some bluegill and crappie and stuff that were moving up, and then it got into like the 40s consistently throughout the days, and then it also it get into like the low 30s or high 20s at nighttime. So that just destroys the water temp. I was hoping for a nice hot spring, but that ain't gonna happen. But the reel pitches out pretty good. I have the brake set on 3 with this spool tension set to barely any side-to-side play. And it pitches out there really nice. It's not, I don't feel like it hangs up at all or anything. And I will mention, I did take a little peek inside the reel, like took out the spool. Actually, I could do that right now. There's a little bit of grease on that spool shaft. Generally, you're not going to want grease on your spool shaft. It's a little bit easier for the companies to do that, especially if they're just mass-producing reels. But if you do, I like to test my reels right out of the box. But if you get one, like any reel, make sure you check for stuff like that. If there's grease in places that they're not supposed to be grease, I got to reverse real quick. But if you got grease, especially on the bearings, and a lot of times there'll be grease on them, you'll get a huge increase in performance just by cleaning out your bearings and like wiping off grease on areas that's not supposed to have grease, like the spool shaft on this reel. Put a little tiny drop of oil on there, and it performs way better. So a lot of times you don't even have to upgrade the bearings, especially if you're gonna be throwing bass lures like this. The drag star does click. I'm gonna kind of lock that down a little bit. Now one thing I did notice is that the transition from casting to pitching actually was pretty good. I know a lot of times with the Shimano reels, a lot of times I end up having to fine tune it for pitching and then fine tune it for casting, which this is actually pretty good so far. It casts pretty good. It's definitely, I have the brakes on like 2.5 right now out of 5 total, and it seems like that's kind of like the fast limit right now, especially after I take out the grease and like make sure the bearings are all good and stuff like that. I'm definitely gonna probably have to turn that down a little bit more. Yeah, it's actually a little fast right now. Oh man, it's so hard to turn that knob. It's not just unique to this. Ooh, had one bite there. I do have a little bit of loose line, so I'm gonna have to cast that out of here. Okay. That brake dial makes a really big difference, I can tell you that. I just went from like that 2.5 area to 3, and it really choked down the distance quite a bit, which is good, that you can actually get that amount of versatility out of it. The wind's not really, got one right here. Kind of like a nice one. Ooh, there he is. Believe it or not, that was actually the first bass that I caught on this Dobbin Sierra series. I caught a couple, but first one in a while. I did catch one like right when the ice came off, and that doesn't really count. But still loads of fun with those small fish like that. Still loads of fun to catch. The rod that I am using, this is the Dobbin Sierra series right here. It's a finesse casting rod that was made by Dobbins. They jumped on the BFS bandwagon. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but they did make a rod. It's a finesse rod. They say it's for crappie, bass, trout. It can work for. I'm just going to reverse real quick. It does work for. It does work for bluegill. Not the greatest for bluegill. That's my opinion on it. But it does work really good for these finesse bass fishing, and also for trout, like rainbow trout that are stocked, or lake trout, splake, whatever you fish. I'm gonna get back to fish over on the shoreline. Actually worked out pretty good. I will say out of the box, and this isn't really, don't take this 100% right now, because it is, I didn't get to wipe off the grease. I didn't want to touch this reel at all. I wanted to keep it stocked as much as possible. And I hooked the same tree. Oh boy. Well, I caught one fish. I didn't get skunked yet. I didn't get skunked at all. But, and actually, I laid into that one quite a bit. And one good thing I will say with, this SLX BFS, with the Corrado BFS, all those like, a little bit heavier BFS reels, is that the spools are a little bit more robust, so you can kind of lay into them a little bit more than, like, I use a lot of those Roro spools, and they're really nice spools, but they're not meant for horse and fish around, especially if you're using line that has stretch like fluoro or monofilament, because that stretch can actually deform the spool quite a bit. I'm going to downsize a little bit. I'm going to throw in a Shakeyhead. What that's going to do is can give me a little bit lighter profile. It's going to allow me to test out the lighter end of the reel, but also it's going to be more weedless than having that open hook like that. I'll turn my brakes up a little bit just to be safe with this one. I'm going to do an open water cast just to get make sure the brakes are all set. Loads up good on this rod. I did test a lot of these lures already on this rod, and the rod handles them all really well. Yeah, it's a little too much on the brakes. There is a little bit of a wind coming from my face up here, but not too much. The FTB brakes that they actually use on here, so it is a little bit more adaptable with the wind versus your normal SVS Infinity system that Shimano uses. I really like the braking system. I've been a fan of it since the Shimano Aldebaran came out back in 2016. But the braking system I really do like, and it's pretty much unchanged, and it does feel very familiar. And I think if you've ever used like the Scorpion BFS, I almost did it again. Make sure every single time you close that shut, because this doesn't have a hinge on there. If you lose that in the water, especially if you get the reel from Japan, it's gonna be a little bit harder to source the parts then for if you lose it in the US. But it is a very familiar braking system. If you've ever used the like the Conquest BFS, Aldebaran, the Scorpion, whatever, it is a really nice braking system. I do like it. I do like the SVS Infinity for BFS. Well, not the Infinity, the SVS system. I like the 2012 and 2015 Aldebaran BFS use. But with those they can be a little squirrely with the wind. This actually cast this Shakeyhead really nice. All right, I'm gonna pull out a crankbait. The retrieve's been pretty good so far. It's definitely it's not like super smooth, but it's not bad by any means. But I do want to test out the retrieve. I'll put on a small crankbait. I think this is the smallest crankbait that I got with me. Let me see. Yeah, this is a Klacken crank 53 by Rapala. It's a pretty small crankbait. It's not ginormous by any means, but it'll hopefully I can get some shallow water bites with it, but I'm mainly just going to test out the retrieve here. Now I'm not going to adjust my brakes. I imagine that this is going to cast a lot better than that worm will. Oh yeah, that thing just launched. And it didn't feel overpowered. Like if you're new to BFS, it might sound kind of weird, but sometimes BFS reels can get overpowered with casting heavier lures. Basically, like the braking systems are so fine that they're meant for lighter lures. So that's what what they're calibrated toward, right? So if you have heavier lures, sometimes even if you have the brakes on max, it doesn't provide enough brake, especially that spool's so light that sometimes the spool would just backlash, like unless you're like super careful with it. But this just felt like I was casting a normal bass reel, just throwing it out there. Granted, this is kind of a heavier crankbait in BFS terms, but like for your finesse casting, this isn't like, I won't say this is like abnormally big by any means. And it does get a little, there's a little bit of that typical gear sound, that woo 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 woo. It's not alarming by any means, but it does. And this is an 8.2 ratio as well. I know that the SLX comes in a 6.3 as well. So I mean, if you are into more, like say your finesse spinner baits, or you just prefer slower reels, I mean you can do that. But for me, BFS, I don't need the power of those low gear ratios. If I need to go slower, I can always reel slower. I can't really make a slower reel any faster. So that's kind of my thought on it. But so there are some people that just prefer low gear ratios just because. Yeah, that's not distracting at all. And if I put different grease in there and stuff, it might perform like a little bit smoother too. But I wouldn't write this off as, I wouldn't write it off as not cranking with it. I mean, if I wanted to throw some finesse crankbaits, spinner baits, what have you, I'd do that with this reel. If I was just going to bring one setup, like this rod is actually really versatile. I test out quite a bit of different fish and lures and stuff like that, but it's pretty versatile rod. And this reel, I mean, if I could throw these crankbaits, spinner baits, shaky heads, I could just take one setup with me. Say, especially if you go pond hopping, like a lot of urban anglers, they do a lot of pond hopping and stuff like that. So if you're just going to bring one setup, I fish from shore plenty of times, and if you have to bring more than one setup, it really slows you down. You have to like put the other one down, go cast, do whatever, pick up your rod. It's kind of a nuisance. So it is nice if you can just have one setup, kind of handle all of your fishing needs. And the reel does have that exciting drag sound, like this sound right here. Wait, let me loose my drag a little bit. So that means like when the line's getting pulled up, it clicks out. I know that's a really, it was one of those features that I didn't really care for at first when the Aldebaran BFS came out with it. But I actually really grew to like it and appreciate it. I know when the Daiwa Alpha's Air TW came out, I really liked that reel. I was like, man, this thing is awesome. But when I just heard nothing when the drag was getting peeled out, I kind of, for me, it was like, man, you know, it's almost like you didn't appreciate it until like you don't have it. And then Ryan Sagisi over at Sagisi Customs, he ended up making a drag clicking set for it. He ended up making a drag clicking set for the Alphas, and it made the reel complete for me. All right, so overall, I mean, I think it's a really nice BFS reel. I'm not saying it's top end like Alpha's Air type stuff, but I am also just using this in bass setting. I'm not using it for like finesse trout fishing like I do a lot of my BFS gear. I will test this out for some panfish and such. I just wanted to get it out to the bass market because that's kind of what it's marketed toward anyway. I know that Roro, they're already going to be making a spool for it. I did confirm that the Scorpion spool does fit in here. So that's going to be easier for them to make some aftermarket spools for it. So there are some aftermarket spool options out there if you are looking to cast lighter lures. But for right now, just casting these bass lures like the Shakeyhead and other lures, it's been actually pretty nice. I think for me, I think that really the difference between the Corrado and the SLX, this is just my speculation, it's just going to come down to colors. Like, do you like the green with a little bit of gold, or do you like the gunmetal with the blue? That's really the difference. And the Corrado is available in the US. And I know Amir over at Baitfinesse Empire, he is getting the SLX BFS. He's getting a few of them in stock to be able to sell at his shop that's based in the US. He also does sell these Dobbins rods too. So this exact setup is available from there, which if you're looking for finesse bass, like bait casting setup, it definitely works. And this rod is got a lot more power than a normal like noodly BFS rod you get from AliExpress, which I do like those. One of my favorite BFS rods is from AliExpress, so I'm not hating on them at all. But yeah, if you're a finesse bass fisherman, you pond hop and you catch some big bluegill or whatever else, I think this setup, especially the reel, I think it all plays together really well. And actually, this kind of sets the tone for the future of BFS with like US-based manufacturers coming out with rods, and there's readily available out of the box ready BFS reels. So if you want to see the Corrado BFS in action and also a comparison between this reel, the Corrado, and the Scorpion, subscribe and also comment down below what else you want to see. This is an evolving series, and it takes input from you guys to make it better for everybody else. So I appreciate it. Keep watching, and until next time.